Hey everybody, this is Teresa tuning in. I just want to say thank you all for subscribing to my channel. I want to say thank you to um, everyone who's listened to my videos, and hopefully what I put out there helps someone through their healing journey and getting through, you know, loss of a child. This channel was dedicated for that. I lost my son, my oldest son, in 2016. He was 26 years old. His name is Alandis Taylor. And the other sad thing about losing him was on July 20th of 2016. July 20th is my youngest son's birthday. So the day my son Alandis died, when I was at the hospital, waiting for word on if he was all right or not. Um, I was getting phone calls from different people, and I didn't realize at the time my son, while we were all waiting in the waiting area, didn't know that he had already passed on. And the people at the hospital, for whatever reason, they did not notify me and my family for maybe at least almost 2 hours after my son had passed on. He actually died in the ambulance um, on the way to the hospital, but um, something that my brother told me back then when it did happen, when the police, I'm sorry, when the ambulance came and picked my son up, he was still alive. He was talking to my brother, and he said to my brother, "I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay." And my brother, I don't know why he didn't ride in the ambulance with my son, but he apparently followed the ambulance. And he said that the ambulance on the way to the hospital pulled over. They pulled over and they waited 10 minutes, he said. So I don't even know if my son would have survived had the ambulance not pulled over and waited 10 minutes. I don't know why they did that. And in my mind, I truly believe that the EMTs let him die. They did not want to save him because was a young black man. And a little time after that, I want to say like maybe a year. Um, and this was, of course, after my brother told me that. During that time, I was going through so much in, my own mental state that I did not, you know, think about filing a lawsuit right away. So when I did reach out to someone, at the time I was living in Chicago, and I reached out to get some advice. And a lawyer in Chicago, first they were like, well, we can't do anything because it's out of our jurisdiction. It happened in another state, which was South Bend, Indiana. But they also said to me that I think the statute of limitations either ran out or was about to run out. So I wasn't able to really do anything. And then I talked to um, his father as well, just to get his insight on what we should do. And he was kind of on the fence about it. Like I said, we were just in a different state of mind at that time. So we didn't get a chance to pursue that. And even with that lawyer in Illinois, said to me that The EMTs pulling over and waiting for 10 minutes was very significant because my son was probably still alive at that point. And because they pulled over and waited, those moments were very crucial. And those moments could have been life saving for him. I don't know who the EMTs were. I don't know the race of them or anything like that, but I do know this, that Black people are the number one target of hate in this country. And we are always treated like we are the worst species in the world. We have been lynched, murdered outside and inside our homes, at hospitals, on the street, all over the place. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if those METs let my son die in that ambulance. I wouldn't be surprised because we are such a hated people, especially by a certain group of race hate us so much, and then that hate spills off into other races of people, and they hate us. And a lot of times they don't even know why. It's like a monkey see, monkey do type of thing. And they have propaganda all over the place with bad images and bad scenarios about our people. And they take a handful of, situations and blow it up into, this is how the culture of who we are. This is how the culture of people are. And that's not who we are. That's not, all of us at all. But because of that, we get judged, we get persecuted heavily, we get treated like we are less than. Animals get treated better than us. People love and care about animals a lot more than they care about Black people. So I really feel like those METs let my son die in that ambulance. He did not die at the hospital. He was still alive when he got in that ambulance. He was still alive. They let him die. They let him die because he was Black, because he was young. They probably took his organs. We are heavily monitored for all type of evil and hate. And it's traumatizing, which is the purpose of me doing this video today, is about trauma and how trauma affects the body. I do know that when my son was killed, July 2016, I was living in South Bend, Indiana, and I want to say maybe like a couple of months after that, I realized that I had to move back to Chicago, because I was really in a situation where I didn't have anywhere to go. My mother was living in a rented house, and she was moving out, and I was living there. I had all of my stuff there, everything I owned was in the shed that was in the house, attached to the house, and not attached, but it was part of the property or whatever. So she moved out, and the landlord um, told her that, it was okay for us to leave our stuff in the shed. So I wind up moving back to Chicago back in, I want to say October, November. My middle son wind up getting an apartment, so I had to move in with him. Um, and I had to leave pretty much 99% of what I had at the moment. So I moved back to Chicago. And before I moved, I had not even noticed it, because I was going through so much trauma of losing my son. And my body went into shock. So July, August, September, no, October, I didn't have a cycle. My body went into such a shock, and I was so traumatized that I didn't have a cycle for like 3, 4 months. And it did not come back down or get back regular until I moved from South Bend. So when I moved back to Chicago in November, it was shortly after that it finally came down, and um, it the color was very weird. It was very darkish brown, and it was very irregular, very irregular. It took a few months for it to get kind of, I want to say normal, even though a cycle kind of has its own process and how it works in the woman's body. But it took a few months after it came down finally, after being gone for like 3 or 4 months. Um, and it was just super irregular. So I later on, after I started doing a little more mental healing, I realized that, I found out through reading and getting information that my body went through a trauma. And it really blew my mind because the only time I would not have a cycle is when I would get pregnant. And I knew I wasn't pregnant. I knew I wasn't pregnant. So I was like, wow, that was some trauma that my body went through because I lost a part of myself, which was my firstborn. So trauma does a lot to the body. And even after losing my son, and I'm just going to lightly touch on this because I did mention it. When I had all of my stuff in that shed, after my mother moved out and I moved back to Chicago, I asked my mom to, talk to the landlord and say, hey, I need a little bit more time. I am gonna come back and get the rest of my things. I mean, I had to, like really get a U-Haul to put, everything on it and move it back. I did have my cousin Puff. Everybody calls her that. That's her nickname. One time she was able to take me to South Bend um, to get, some of my things. We went in her car. Her car wasn't very big. And, I grabbed like my sewing machine. I was able to grab maybe a few storage totes. I even grabbed some things and set it back. Like, okay, I'll come back and get that or whatever. Um, I had like maybe like a few dishes I grabbed, just a few things, but I was trying to grab some like main stuff that I could use, like of course my one of my sewing machines and some of the other things that I needed for sewing. And a few dishes and maybe a few little other things. Not much at all. Like I said, her car wasn't that big. So it was only, so much I could put in there. I had to grab my son's picture. He had a really his grandmother gave me a really big printout picture of him when he graduated from high school. So I wanted to get that. I grabbed that, and that took up a lot of space in the back. So it was just only so much I could put in there. But I did, manage to get a few things. I was so grateful for her to do that for me. And she was like, hey, cuz, if you want to, come back again, we can do that. And, I was like, yeah, we can do that. That'll be great. But I know I want to get a U-Haul and get everything out. So fast forward, this was happening like, December. 2016. So during that time, I was calling my mother to let her know, hey, I am gonna come and get my stuff. Just let that landlord know that I just got to get a U-Haul. So as I was calling her, day by day, and at the same time dealing with my, the trauma that I was going through from losing my son, she wasn't answering her phone. She wasn't answering, and I couldn't leave messages or anything like that. So fast forwarding past that, December, January came. And it was like maybe like the beginning of January, I got a call from my brother who was still living out there. And he was like, sis, um, I'm at the house. That landlord, he took everything out of the shed. I'm talking to the people because at the time when my mother moved out, like right after she moved out, the landlord got somebody into the house, and those people wanted to use the shed. So my brother was out there talking to the people, and I could hear him and the people as he was talking to them, and he was asking them, what did the landlord do with the stuff? And I heard the lady say, well, he threw it all away. And when I tell you, I broke down, and I just was devastated all over again. And at the time when it all happened, my son's grandmother, my ex-husband's mother, she called me, and, I was crying, hysterical and upset and whatever. And she basically was like, you seem to be more upset about your stuff than you were about losing your son. And that really made me so angry that I almost hung up on her. And I was like, how dare you say that to me? On top of losing my son, I lost 99% of everything I own. Why can't I have a reaction to that? Why do I have to be judged by having a bigger reaction over losing things as opposed to losing my son? And that was very disheartening. I felt sickened by her saying that to me, and she was a minister. She is a apostle, a pastor, and supposed to speak life and love into people. And here I am going through a devastating time of not only losing my son, now I lost everything that I own, and I'm talking 25, 30 years of things that I owned. My grandmother's sewing machine that I got after she passed away. Um, my son's birth certificate. I made a copy of it before I gave it to him, so he can, have it and do and take care of his business and all of that. He was of age, so I gave him the original copy. But I took a photocopy of it, a Xerox copy of it myself, so I could have it. And I lost that. I would keep all of their report cards, all of the certificates of recognition. I kept all of that, gone. Both my college degrees, gone. All of the clothes I had, all of the clothes that I made for myself, gone. All of the shoes that I had when I worked at DSW. Um, I really built up a beautiful shoe collection, gone. A lot of other things. I picked up jewelry making long before, I went through all of that. Um, Everything that I had made for myself, all the tools I had, all of the beads and the dabbles and the doodads or whatever, gone. Um, a lot of my life was gone. Every birthday card, every Christmas card, every thank you card I had got over the years was gone. Everything, everything I had. All of my fabric, all of my patterns, so much of my sewing, tools and supplies, gone, just gone. Things people had gave me as gifts, gone. Everything was just gone. And, when my brother told me that, I just broke down again. And, he was upset because he had things in there as well. Um, I was like, give me the landlord's number. And he wouldn't even give it to me. He wouldn't give me the landlord's number. I was calling my mother. I was so angry. She wouldn't even answer her phone. My brother called her and she told him that I told her that I would have everything out in 30 days. And I was like, well, you know what? I asked her to tell the landlord that I needed some more time. And she never told him that. She never told him that I needed some more time to get my things out. She just didn't care. She didn't care. And it's a reason for that at the time. I don't want to get into that. Um, I'll probably do that on another video because it's just more trauma. More trauma. And trauma is not only mental, but it's physical. And like I said before, when I lost my son, my body went through a shock and trauma, and my cycle um, disappeared for several months. Um, it can go beyond that. Trauma can really set in your body, and if it is not dealt with, meaning that if you don't heal from it, if you don't address it, if you don't find a way to talk it out or, at least acknowledge it, it will sit in your body and it will become a cancer. And I know I won't say a lot of people, but I do know people who have been through trauma and it killed them. And these people did not smoke, they did not drink, they didn't do, worldly things, but they went through a trauma that they did not heal from, they did not seek counsel from or for, and it ultimately took them out. Trauma can show up in many different ways in the body. Like I said, you can be a person that don't drink, don't smoke, um, you don't do a lot of worldly things, meaning you don't go hanging out and, you're not sleeping around with different people and attaching your spirit to different souls. It can go beyond that. So when, let's say, a woman has been raped, when a woman has been physically abused, that's trauma. And if she's not healed from that, it can show up in her body as cancer. And even if it's not cancer, it could show up as heart disease. If it's not heart disease, it could show up as um, so many different things. I don't want to start naming off a bunch of, dysfunctions in the body. But trauma can cause all of that, especially if it's not healed, if it has not been counseled, if it has not been released. It will ultimately kill you. And when my son died, when he was killed, he he bled out, and I just wish that when it did happen, that's a trauma. You know, being physically hurt is a trauma, and you have to treat it right away. And unfortunately, my son and his girlfriend at the time and the people who were around, they obviously did not know how to treat a stab wound because all they had to do was put pressure on it and it would have ultimately saved his life. When the perpetrator by the name of Allison Wyatt, when she stabbed my son, she hit an artery. She stabbed him in his butt. She stabbed him in his butt. So that means that she attacked him from behind. And when she stabbed him, she hit an artery. And from what the girlfriend told me, there was a lot of blood. He was losing a lot of blood. And as he was losing his blood, he was getting thirsty. And he was asking for water. And this is what she told me. She told me and his father and his grandmother when we were asking her, what happened, what took place, what was being said, what were you all doing? And she said that he was asking for water. So they didn't try to stop the bleeding, they was just soaking it up with towels instead of putting pressure on it. The pressure would have stopped the bleeding, at least until the ambulance got there. And at least my son would have been alive. And it's like maybe the ambulance, shouldn't have took him. Maybe my brother should have, kept the pressure on and they rushed him to the hospital. Just so many scenarios that could have saved his life. And it's unfortunately it's water under the bridge. So, but trauma is a deadly thing if you do not heal and release it. It will sit in your body, it will take root, and it will turn into a cancer. And it will ultimately spread. And a lot of times, if it's, you know, spread in certain areas, um, it can be, uncurable or it'll just be too far gone. And you won't be able to treat it. So I've been talking for 28 minutes now. I was trying not to make this so long, but I guess I, kind of talked about something that I did not anticipate on talking about. But I just want to just you know, let you know that trauma has to be released. It has to be healed because if it's not, it will show up in your body as cancer or another disease, and it will ultimately take you out. Like I know women and people who've been through trauma and they didn't get the proper healing or the proper release of it, and it ultimately took them out. And sometimes, when you go through a trauma, and you're not the drinking and smoking kind, you tend to eat things that are not healthy. Um, you tend to box your feelings in instead of letting them out. You shut down. And then you got the people who do drink and smoke just to deal and numb the pain. And that is just the trauma on top of the trauma. People who drink and smoke to deal with their, trauma, it just makes it worse. And there's just other ways that you can deal with it. And there's other ways that you can release it where it's not taking root in your body and causing, dysfunction. So we really have to heal from trauma, no matter what form it has come in. If you had your heart broken, that's trauma. If you find yourself, you crying about the person, you can't eat, you can't sleep, that's a trauma that the body is going through. And sometimes people can't survive a heartache. They can't survive a heartbreak. And when my son died, and I was talking with his father, he was very concerned about me in a way that he was like, listen, T, you cannot let this take you out because it can. And he told me about several women that he, met or knew at work that lost children, that lost a child. And one lady, he said that the trauma was just so much for her to bear that it broke her heart and it ultimately took her life. And then there was another lady that he met or knew, however, um, she lost two children. And man, I just couldn't imagine that pain, but that trauma, he said that, man, he said to her, wow, I can't believe you got to go through this again. I don't know, what happened with her, but just having to deal with that trauma all over again. And then the lady that lost her child and the trauma ultimately killed her. It was the heartbreak, the heartache. And people can die from heartbreak and heartache. They can. Um, the movie Star Wars, the very first ones that came out, Princess Leia, um, when she died, her mother died very shortly after that. I want to say maybe like the next day, the day before. I forgot their names, and I should remember because they were big stars. But I'm just kind of like tuned out of, trying to figure out what their names were. So please forgive me on that, which is why I went to Star Wars. But they're two famous people. But yeah, when she died, when the daughter died, the mother died like a day after that. The mother died a day after. So trauma, trauma is deadly. And if you don't heal from it, if you don't release it, you will be cutting your life short. And you're not giving yourself a chance to live. So release your trauma, get out in nature. If you can't listen to, certain types of music, listen to frequency music, 432 hertz. Um, there's a lot of frequency music on YouTube that is um, very healing to your mental state. It has helped me a lot listening to frequency music because there was a time when I couldn't listen to regular music. It just made me go back to, the past, and it brought up memories, and it made me incredibly sad. And I would just find myself, sometimes, crying, to the point to where it would make me sick. I would have to, take a nap because I cried myself, to such a state. Um, just a deep, hard cry where, the pain is, and, you know, a place where no word can touch, no matter what a person can say to you or anything like that. It's just a place where nobody can touch, that you just have to let time heal it, but you have to give it the frequency that it needs to heal. And that means speaking affirmations over your life, over yourself, over your situation, um, listening to the healing music, like the frequencies. They they really help you calm down your nervous system, and it'll give you an opportunity to maybe ground yourself, you know, and get centered, where you could take a deep breath, where you could, manage your crying. Um, you could probably get, better sleep and things like that. So I do know, like I said, for me, it helped a lot with my mental state. And I couldn't stop there. I had to keep going and do it more and listen to it more and often. I would wake up listening to it. I will play it in the car as I'm driving to work. I would get to work and I would continuously to let it play. I will um, play it, before I go to bed. I will listen to it, just to ease my mind, ease my mental state, ease my nervous system, where all of that trauma lies, and it, just sends a vibration, and it could show up in many different ways. So I really hope that this could help someone who is going through the trauma and the healing of losing a child. Um, I really want to, I really want this to resonate and penetrate whoever listens to it and needs it. Some people don't receive you if they don't relate to your trauma. And there are some people who are, just want to absorb your energy and try to, you know, play and feed off of that. But I really want this to touch the heart and the spirit of, someone who is going through the processes of healing from losing a child. I trust me, it just does not get easy. It does not. And you have to do things in your own time. And if it means, taking a break from social media, if it means cutting your phone off so you don't get a phone call or text message or whatever, do that for yourself. And those things will help you little by little, but you have to be consistent with it and you have to discipline yourself to do it. Even when you don't feel like it, even when you feel sad or anything, even if you're in a good mood, still do it. The key is discipline and consistency. So I really, really hope that this helps someone who is struggling with, the trauma of losing a child. I really want you to know that I am here for you. I understand you. I resonate and I relate to you in every way. And I want you to heal. I want you to release all of that trauma from your body so it does not settle and take root and turn into a cancer or another ailment in the body, another dysfunction that is keeping you from living and can cut your life short. So do that for yourself. I thank each and every one of you for subscribing to my channel. And I really appreciate you guys listening to my videos. I try not to make them, long and lengthy. I do know that, sometimes people attention span is short, and, sometimes they want you to just get to the point. And I do know sometimes people can ramble on and babble, and, they get off track and, lose their train of thought. So and I do that, and I'm working on it, But I do want, my community to um, just show some grace, and do it for me, do it for yourself, and you will be, so happy that you took those steps. I do get out into nature. I do grounding, and that is taking your shoes and socks off and letting your feet plant into the earth. Grass is the best way to ground yourself to the earth. I take walks up Stone Mountain. I take my shoes and socks off when I get up there. It feels so good to be connected to the earth that way. And I highly recommend it. Get out into nature. That is part of healing. If you need counseling, if you need therapy, please do it. Take that opportunity. I do know that the Black community has never been, the culture to go to therapy, um, to seek counseling. Their thing was to go to church, read the Bible, pray to God or Jesus or whatever. And I was in that life, but that did not help me. And I have to allow myself to take the path and a journey that helps and resonates with me. And this path that I've taken has done the most incredible, incredible work for me that unfortunately the Bible and church could have never done for me. And I was an usher, I know what it is to be in church, to be in ministry. I was an usher in my ex mother in law's ministry. So I know what that life is. But at those times, I was going through something different, and it did not help me. Now, they will say it'll work if you work it. Listen, I did the things. I fasted. I prayed. I read the Bible. I went to Bible study. I showed up for church. I did all that. I spoke in tongues. I got baptized in Jesus' name and all of that. But guess what? Nothing helped me. It did not help me. It did not give me the opportunity to understand what I was going through. And that's how it was for me. Everybody has a different journey. And I'm not saying that it's not going to work for you. It just didn't work for me. And as I continued my journey into the spiritual of, getting to know God and myself, I realized that there is another way to get connected to God. And it does not require you to go to church or be an usher and really not read the Bible. But again, I'm not encouraging anybody to not do what they've been doing, you know, all their lives or up to this point. Everybody has a different walk, and this is my walk, and I'm walking in it with my chest out because it's working for me, and I'm glad I found it. So, again, I just want to say thank you, gratitude, gratitude to my subscribers. I am so grateful for you all and everyone who's listened to my videos. Please do not hesitate to make a comment, questions or anything like that. I'm open to that. And I want to build this community up. I would love to go live and maybe, get some people on a panel to share their experience. And, we come together, we heal together from the trauma that we've suffered. I truly believe that that's important. And I really want this to resonate to those people. And we can get through this together. We can heal together. I would love that. I would love to get 50 followers, at least 50 subscribers, so I can go live. That would be phenomenal. That way I can get people on a panel. We can talk. I'm open for that. I'm looking forward to that. I truly believe as long as I stay disciplined and consistent, and showing up for you all, showing up for myself, that it can happen. I truly believe that. I'm a very optimistic person. And you will see that as time go on, I do want to pour more into the channel. Again, I apologize for being away from it for so long. I really wanted this to be a catalyst for, the people out there who are going through exactly what I'm going through. Living every day knowing that, I lost a child and it's just an everyday, step by step, moment by moment thing. I have my good days where I'm smiling and I'm thinking about him, and I have my days when I am weeping and hurting and aching for him. To see his face, to hear his voice, to feel his hugs again. You know, it's an everyday thing. So thank you all for listening. I send you all so much love and gratitude. I pray that you are having a good year so far. I know a lot has been going on, but stay grounded, stay connected, and I will see you in the next video.